Before you can do this, you're going to get familiar with this. Power and feeder cable. There are few things more important to a show than power and feeder cable. Just keep in mind, nothing can happen without power. And if you have the lowest seniority on the audio crew, you will probably be the one who's dealing with this heavy cable every morning and every night. So let's take a look at some of the pieces involved and some of the things you will see at a show. You will need to be able to tell the difference between a male Cam-lok, such as the one pictured here. Notice the flat piece on the lug inside. That is key to locking the connectors together with just a quarter clockwise turn. And the female Cam-lok. Notice that little nub inside that helps to lock it against a flat piece on the male connector. In a typical touring kit, you will also have Cam-lok T's if you need to split the power into a couple different directions. You will also be carrying a pair of Cam-lok turnarounds, male to male and also female to female. Ground and neutral may be reversed, one or both, but the hot phases will always be the same direction. They should never be reversed. Female at the service, male at your distro. You'll also be carrying a set of tails. That is Cam-lok to bare wire. That little section of insulation may need to be cut back to expose the bare wire in case you need qualified electrician to tie you into a local service with lugs. And speaking of lugs, here's an example of a company switch that has lugs to tie you into, but also has Cam-loks if you want to take that route. This company switch is a beautiful example of a service at a well-equipped theater. Notice the two neutrals. It's two different genders. And here is another company switch that is actually terminated. Notice it says, "Please leave on for video." Next up, we're going to talk about something I was taught on my very first tour. Measuring power in the morning. I feel I need to point something out here. Always treat electrical power with respect. Always assume anything that you're working with is hot and treat it that way, because mishandled electricity can cause serious injury or death. Green is ground, neutral is white, A phase is black, B phase is red, and C phase is blue. The first thing I would do would be to measure the voltage between ground and neutral. If it's less than 1 volt, that tells you that your neutral is clean and nothing is spitting voltage down your neutral line. And also, if the resistance is less than 1 ohm, that lets you know that you have a good ground. If the resistance is infinity, that is not a good ground. And a high resistance tells you that your transformer is located a long way away. Either way, not great for audio. Keep in mind, the less than 1 volt between ground and neutral could only be valid if nothing in your system is on. The best practices are either to have all your breakers off or to have nothing terminated into your distro, amplifiers, console, anything like that while you're measuring this. Now let's move on to phase voltage. You would measure between neutral and the black A phase, should read 120 volts. Neutral to B, the red phase, should also read 120 volts, and also neutral to C, the blue phase, should be 120 volts. That's called phase voltage. If you measure ground to each of the phases, they should also read 120 volts. Line voltage is what's referred to phase, black to red should be 208, red to blue should be 208, and also blue to black should be 208 volts. And for a little bit more explanation, these three phases are shifted by 120 degrees. With the three of them, you actually get a full 360 degrees revolution. Now, with the chain hoist, if it's running backwards, all you need to do to fix this is swap 2 of the phases. It doesn't matter which ones. The reason why this is important is it makes sure that up on the controller is actually up and down is actually down. And also, some of the older chain motors, the safety on them only work when the phase is correct. If you run your motor without a fully functioning limit, that could be catastrophic. Equipment could be falling from the air. Audio will typically carry 2-aught cable, and for a bundle of 5 wires, it is about 1.5 pounds per foot. Your 25-foot chunk is weighing in at 38.75 pounds. Your 100-foot chunk is 155 pounds, and in arenas, you may need 200 feet or more. So that chunk is 310 pounds that you're dealing with every morning and every night. Next up, load balancing. Well, what is load balancing? The 3 phases will all have the same current rating. With audio crews carrying 2-aught cable, they are capable of drawing 200 amps per phase. Usually at the start of a tour, you would plug in your electronics in a manner that you would expect to be doing the entire tour. And during production rehearsals or the first show, you would put a probe on each one of these phases. The goal is to draw equal current load on each one of these phases. The reason why, I can tell you from experience, is sometimes local services may have a weak fuse. It may say 200 amps on it, but the fuse may actually blow earlier. Knowing that your load is balanced helps in troubleshooting and also helps to explain why something happened to your artist or your production manager. Another reason is to help reduce wear and tear on equipment. As feeder heats up due to a larger current draw on it, voltage may actually drop on that phase. Okay, so what does this actually mean? Well, for instance, you may have amplifiers that draw 2 phases of power. In this case, you would want them distributed across all 3 phases. So maybe one amplifier is taking phase A and B, the next one's taking B and C and A, and so on and so forth. The goal is to not have your amplifiers all sitting on one phase and your console on another and backline on the third. That's not what you're looking for. The PA amplifiers are going to be drawing a lot more current. And when we look at Ohm's law, total power is equal to voltage times current. And as you raise voltage, you can lower the current needed to supply required power. This can help efficiency. For instance, if an amplifier is dealing with a large kick drum hit or sub bass or something like that where it needs a big voltage swing, it doesn't have to draw as much current. Also, cable weight is reduced in the truck. It's less cable weight in the air in the case of self-powered loudspeakers, and you can power more boxes off of one circuit. I'm just going to close out this video with some shots of some generators. You won't always have a nice company switch to terminate and get power from. Sometimes you're out in the middle of a desert. You still have 3-phase power. You're still doing a show. You're basically turning diesel into electrons. One thing to note about generators is I will typically run them no more than 125 volts per phase, but I like to sit at about 123 with generators, depending on the size. Typically, if you're not carrying the generators at a huge festival, you are going to have some voltage swings. So I like to set them just a little bit hot, not too hot, so that when they get pulled down by the PA, you're still within operating range. All right, hope you enjoyed it. Until next time.